Ladies and gentlemen, if you are enjoying my videos, please click the like button. It is the only way the YouTube algorithm really notices me. I would be very grateful to you. Alone in the Alaskan Peril. Scary story, published by Scare Fiction. Chapter 1. The Desolate Wilderness. The bitter chill of the Alaskan wilderness seeped into my bones as I trudged through the snow-covered terrain. My breath hung in the frigid air, a misty veil that obscured the vast expanse of the frozen landscape. I pulled my coat tighter around me, the weight of my equipment pressing against my shoulders. I am Jack, a seasoned engineer tasked with inspecting a remote section of the Alaskan pipeline for structural issues. It was a lonely assignment, but one that I had grown accustomed to over the years. The isolation, the solitude, it suited me fine. As I ventured deeper into the wilderness, the world around me seemed to shrink away, swallowed by the vast expanse of white. The only sound was the crunch of snow beneath my boots. The only movement, the gentle sway of snow-laden branches in the biting wind. But there was something else, something lurking just beyond the edge of my perception. Strange noises echoed through the stillness, whispers carried on the wind. I shook my head, chalking it up to fatigue-induced hallucinations. I had been traveling for days, after all, with little rest to speak of. I pressed on, determined to reach my destination before nightfall. The shadows grew longer, the sun sinking lower in the sky. The darkness seemed to seep into my very bones, a chill that no amount of layers could ward off. And then I saw it, the pipeline, stretching out before me like a great serpent slumbering beneath the snow. It was a marvel of engineering, a lifeline in this unforgiving landscape. But as I approached, a sense of unease washed over me. The air seemed to hum with energy, a palpable tension that prickled at the back of my neck. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the radio at my hip. But before I could summon the courage to call for help, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was Sarah, my colleague and fellow engineer. Her face was illuminated by the soft glow of her headlamp, her breath forming clouds in the icy air. She smiled warmly, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of doubt, of uncertainty. "Jack," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm glad you made it." I nodded, my throat tight with apprehension. "What's going on, Sarah? Why are we out here?" She hesitated, her gaze darting to the pipeline looming ominously in the distance. "There have been reports of structural issues," she said finally. "We're here to investigate." I nodded, though her words did little to ease my growing sense of dread. Together, we set off towards the pipeline, our footsteps muffled by the thick blanket of snow. But as we drew closer, the sense of unease only intensified. The air crackled with static electricity, sending shivers down my body. And then I saw them strange shapes moving in the darkness, fleeting glimpses of something otherworldly. I blinked, my heart pounding in my chest, but when I looked again, there was nothing there, just the endless expanse of snow and ice. I shook my head, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that threatened to consume me. But deep down, I knew that something was terribly wrong. And as the darkness closed in around us, we were not alone in the wilderness. We were being watched, and whatever was out there, it was hungry for something more than just our fear. Chapter 2. Encounters in the Night. The darkness of night enveloped the Alaskan wilderness like a suffocating shroud, swallowing every trace of light in its depths. As I retreated to my cabin, exhaustion weighed heavily upon my shoulders, but sleep eluded me. Instead, my mind was plagued by vivid nightmares that seemed to blur the line between reality and illusion. In my dreams, shadowy figures lurked in the darkness, their eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. They stalked me through the snow-covered landscape, their movements fluid and silent as they closed in around me. I tried to run, to escape their grasp, but no matter how fast I ran, they were always one step ahead. I awoke with a start, my heart pounding in my chest, sweat-soaked sheets tangled around me. It took a moment for my surroundings to come into focus, the dim light of dawn filtering through the frost-covered windows. But even in the cold light of day, the echoes of my nightmares lingered like a haunting melody. I stumbled out of bed, the chill of the cabin seeping into my bones. As I made my way outside, I was greeted by the sight of Sarah, my colleague, hunched over a map spread out on the hood of her truck. She looked up as I approached, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Jack," she said, her voice tinged with concern. "You look like you didn't sleep a wink." I shook my head, unable to shake the lingering sense of unease that clung to me like a second skin. "Nightmares," I muttered, dismissing her concern with a wave of my hand. But Sarah wasn't convinced. She studied me intently, her gaze piercing through the facade I had carefully constructed. "You're not the only one," she said quietly. "I've been having them too." I frowned, taken aback by her admission. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah hesitated, her eyes darting to the snow-covered ground beneath her feet. "I've been seeing things," she confessed. "Strange shadows, moving in the darkness. I thought it was just my imagination, but now—" Her words trailed off, lost in the howling wind that swept through the trees. I shivered, suddenly aware of the oppressive weight of the wilderness pressing down on us. "We should stick together," Sarah said, her voice firm. "Whatever's out there, we'll face it together." I nodded, grateful for her support. Together, we set out to inspect the pipeline, our footsteps muffled by the thick layer of snow. But as the night wore on, the sense of unease only deepened. I heard whispers on the wind, faint and indistinct, like the murmurs of lost souls crying out for release. I brushed them off as a trick of the imagination, but deep down, I knew that something was terribly wrong. And then I saw them footprints in the snow, leading away from the cabin and into the darkness beyond. They were large and misshapen, like the prints of some monstrous creature that lurked in the shadows. I felt a chill run down my body as I followed the tracks, my heart pounding in my chest. But as I rounded a bend in the trail, I stumbled upon something that sent a shiver down my body. A figure stood before me, its form obscured by the darkness. Its eyes glowed with a fierce intensity, fixed upon me with an unblinking stare. I tried to speak, to call out to Sarah for help, but no sound escaped my lips. And then, in the blink of an eye, the figure was gone, vanished into thin air, like a wisp of smoke. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my mind reeling with disbelief. But deep down, I knew that what I had seen was real. And as the night closed in around us, I realized that we were not alone in the wilderness. There was something out there, something ancient and malevolent, lurking in the shadows, waiting to claim us as its own. Chapter 3: Unexplained Phenomena. The wilderness seemed to grow more sinister with each passing moment, its icy grip tightening around me like a vice. Strange occurrences plagued my every move, casting doubt upon my sanity and leaving me grasping for answers in a world shrouded in darkness. It started with my equipment, a subtle glitch here, a malfunction there. At first, I dismissed it as nothing more than the rigors of the harsh environment taking their toll. But as the malfunctions escalated, I began to suspect that something more sinister was at play. My radio crackled with static, its once reliable signal reduced to a garbled mess of incomprehensible noise. I fiddled with the dials, cursing under my breath as I tried in vain to restore communication with the outside world. But it was no use. The radio remained stubbornly silent, its silence a chilling reminder of my isolation in this unforgiving wilderness. As I ventured deeper into the forest, I noticed strange symbols carved into the trees, intricate patterns etched into the bark with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. They seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, their presence a silent warning of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. I reached out to touch one of the symbols, my fingers trembling with apprehension. But before I could make contact, a voice whispered in my ear, a faint, ethereal sound that sent shivers down my body. I spun around, but there was no one there, just the empty expanse of the forest stretching out before me, silent and still as the grave. My unease grew with each passing moment, a gnawing sensation that clawed at the edges of my mind. I felt as though I was being watched, a pair of unseen eyes boring into me from the darkness. I quickened my pace, desperate to escape the suffocating embrace of the wilderness. But no matter how fast I ran, the sense of unease followed me like a shadow, relentless in its pursuit. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. A clearing lay before me, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, filtering through the canopy above. But it was what lay in the center of the clearing that caught my attention, a circle of stones, arranged in a perfect ring, with a single figure standing at its center. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure turned to face me, its features obscured by the darkness. But even in the dim light, I could sense its malevolent intent, a palpable aura of menace that hung in the air like a thick fog. I tried to speak, to demand answers, but my voice caught in my throat. The figure raised its hand, and I felt a surge of energy wash over me, sending me reeling backwards with a cry of pain. And then, with a flicker of movement, the figure was gone, vanished into the night like a wisp of smoke. I lay there for what felt like an eternity, my mind spinning with confusion and fear. But deep down, I knew that what I had witnessed was real, a manifestation of the darkness that lurked in the heart of the wilderness, waiting to consume me whole. As I struggled to my feet, I realized that I was no longer alone in this battle against the unknown. And as the night closed in around me, I vowed to uncover the truth behind the unexplained phenomena that plagued the Alaskan wilderness, no matter the cost. Chapter 4. The Alaskan wilderness was no longer just a backdrop for my work. It had become a stage for the macabre, a theater of horrors that played out before my very eyes. As I ventured deeper into the heart of the wilderness, I encountered apparitions, ghostly figures that haunted the pipeline, their forms twisted and contorted by the tragedies of the past. Each specter bore the scars of a tragic accident that had occurred during the construction of the pipeline. Some were missing limbs, others had faces obscured by grotesque masks of pain and anguish. Their eyes, hollow and lifeless, seemed to bore into my very soul, accusing me of crimes I had not committed. I tried to flee, to escape the grasp of these vengeful spirits, but they followed me relentlessly, their spectral forms moving with an unnatural grace that sent fear down my soul. I could feel their presence lurking in the shadows, their whispers echoing the stillness of the night. Desperate for answers, I sought out the elders of the local community, hoping they could shed light on the dark history of the land. What I discovered was a tale of tragedy and loss, of workers who had perished in accidents that had been swept under the rug in the name of progress. I listened in horror as the elders recounted stories of men and women who had lost their lives in the pursuit of profit, their sacrifices forgotten by all but the spirits that now haunted the wilderness. It was a sobering reminder of the price of human greed, a cautionary tale of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. But it was not just the past that haunted me. The spirits themselves tormented me, their spectral forms materializing before me with increasing frequency. They spoke of unfinished business, of debts that had yet to be paid, and warned me of impending danger that lurked just beyond the horizon. I tried to ignore their warnings, to push aside the fear that threatened to consume me, but their words lingered in my mind like a lingering echo. I knew that I could not ignore their pleas, that I had a duty to uncover the truth and put their restless souls to rest. And so, with a heavy heart and a sense of foreboding, I set out once more into the wilderness, determined to confront the darkness that lurked within and uncover the secrets that lay hidden beneath the snow. Little did I know that my journey would lead me to the very heart of the haunting, to a confrontation with forces beyond my comprehension. Chapter 5. Confronting the Past. The bitter winds howled through the Alaskan wilderness, carrying with them the whispers of the past. Determined to uncover the truth behind the haunting, I delved deeper into the history of the pipeline, my every step leading me closer to the dark secrets buried beneath the frozen ground. I scoured old documents and interviewed locals, piecing together a narrative of tragedy and despair. It was a tale of greed and exploitation, of workers who had been lured to the wilderness with promises of wealth and prosperity, only to meet a fate far worse than death. As I pored over the faded pages of yellowed newspapers, I stumbled upon a story that scared my soul. It spoke of a group of workers who had vanished without a trace, their disappearance shrouded in mystery and rumor. According to local legend, the workers had stumbled upon something in the wilderness, something ancient and malevolent, that had claimed them as its own. Some said they had been taken by supernatural forces, while others whispered of a curse that had befallen them for trespassing on sacred ground. The more I learned, the clearer it became that the spirits haunting the pipeline were seeking vengeance for the injustices they had suffered. They were determined to claim more lives, to exact their revenge upon those who had wronged them in life. I felt a cold knot of fear tighten in my chest as I realized the enormity of the task before me. I was not just facing a supernatural threat. I was confronting the sins of the past, the ghosts of those who had been forgotten by history. But I could not turn back now, not when the lives of so many hung in the balance. With a steely resolve, I set out once more into the wilderness, determined to put an end to the haunting once and for all. As I ventured deeper into the heart of the wilderness, I could feel the eyes of the spirits upon me, their presence a tangible weight on my soul. But I pressed on, driven by a sense of duty and a desire to set things right. And then, just when I thought I could go no further, I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. A makeshift altar lay hidden in a clearing, its surface adorned with offerings of bone and blood. Symbols of ancient power were etched into the earth, their meaning lost to time, but unmistakable in their malevolent intent. I knew then that I had stumbled upon the source of the haunting, the nexus of darkness that had brought the spirits to life. And as I stood there, bathed in the sickly glow of moonlight, I realized that the battle for the soul of the wilderness was far from over. Chapter 6. Battle of Wills. The tension between Sarah and me hung thick in the frigid Alaskan air, a palpable force that threatened to suffocate us both. I had confronted her about the strange occurrences plaguing us, but instead of support, I was met with skepticism and accusations of paranoia. "You're seeing things, Jack," Sarah insisted, her voice tinged with frustration. "There's nothing out there but snow and trees. You need to get a grip on yourself before you end up getting us both killed." Her words cut deep, slicing through the fragile veneer of my sanity. I wanted to believe her, to dismiss the nightmares and apparitions as figments of my imagination. But deep down, I knew that there was something sinister lurking in the shadows, something that threatened to consume us both. As tensions between us rose, I found myself struggling to maintain my grip on reality. The line between nightmare and waking life blurred, leaving me adrift in a sea of uncertainty. I questioned everything: my memories, my senses, even my own sanity. I withdrew into myself, seeking solace in the isolation of the wilderness. But the solitude only served to amplify my fears, leaving me feeling more isolated than ever before. I was adrift in a world of shadows and whispers, unsure whom to trust or where to turn for help. The nights were the worst: long, cold stretches of darkness punctuated by the haunting cries of the wind. I would lie awake for hours, my mind racing with thoughts of the horrors that awaited me beyond the safety of my cabin walls. But even in the darkness, there were moments of clarity, fleeting glimpses of the truth that lurked just beyond the edge of my consciousness. I could feel the presence of the spirits watching me, their eyes boring into me from the darkness. I knew then that I was not alone, that the battle for my soul was far from over. And as the line between reality and nightmare blurred, I realized that the only way to survive was to trust my instincts and confront the darkness head-on. With a newfound sense of determination, I set out into the wilderness once more, determined to uncover the truth behind the haunting and put an end to the nightmare that had consumed us all. Little did I know that the greatest battle was yet to come, a battle of wills that would test the very limits of my sanity and strength. Chapter 7: Descent into Madness. The relentless onslaught of supernatural phenomena weighed heavily upon me, a suffocating blanket that smothered my sanity. I grappled with hallucinations and visions that twisted reality beyond recognition, blurring the boundaries between past and present in a nightmarish haze. I stumbled through the wilderness, my mind a labyrinth of twisted corridors and dead ends. Shadows danced at the edge of my vision, whispering secrets that I dare not comprehend. Every sound, every shadow seemed to taunt me, mocking my feeble attempts to grasp hold of reality. The visions came unbidden, clawing their way into my consciousness with a ferocity that left me gasping for breath. I saw faces of the workers who had perished in the construction of the pipeline, their eyes hollow and accusing. I heard their screams, their cries of anguish echoing in the darkness. But it was not just the past that haunted me. The future loomed dark and uncertain, a void of endless despair. I saw visions of death and destruction, of a world consumed by the darkness that lurked within the wilderness. And in the midst of it all, I saw myself, a broken shell of a man, lost to the madness that threatened to consume us all. I tried to fight back, to cling to the last shreds of my sanity, but the darkness was relentless in its pursuit. It seeped into every crevice of my mind, twisting my thoughts into a tangled web of confusion and despair. And then, in a moment of clarity, I realized the truth. The only way to escape the horrors of the pipeline was to confront the source of the haunting head-on. I knew it would be dangerous, perhaps even deadly, but I had no choice. The darkness had already claimed me, body and soul, and there was no turning back. With a steely resolve, I set out into the wilderness once more, the shadows swirling around me like tendrils of smoke. I could feel the presence of the spirits watching me, their eyes burning with a fierce intensity that scared me. But I pressed on, driven by a determination born of desperation. I would confront the darkness that lurked within the heart of the wilderness, no matter the cost. For I knew that the fate of the world hung in the balance, and only by facing our fears could we hope to emerge victorious. Chapter 8: The Haunted Past. The bitter wind whipped through the Alaskan wilderness, carrying with it the echoes of a tragedy long forgotten. Determined to uncover the truth behind the haunting, I delved deep into the history of the pipeline's construction, seeking answers buried beneath layers of time and secrecy. As I sifted through old documents and faded photographs, a chilling tale began to emerge, a tale of greed and desperation, of workers who had been lured to the wilderness with promises of wealth and prosperity, only to meet a fate far worse than death. I learned of a tragic accident that had claimed the lives of several workers, their bodies lost to the unforgiving wilderness that surrounded them. But as I dug deeper, I discovered something even more disturbing, a dark ritual performed by the workers in a desperate attempt to appease the vengeful spirits of the land. According to local legend, the workers had resorted to desperate measures to ward off the darkness that threatened to consume them. They had performed a ritual, sacrificing their own blood in a bid to placate the spirits and bring an end to the haunting that plagued them. But their efforts had been in vain, their sacrifices only serving to fuel the rage of the vengeful spirits that lurked in the shadows. And as I pieced together the fragments of the past, I realized that the only way to break the cycle of violence was to uncover the truth behind the haunting and put the spirits to rest once and for all. With a newfound sense of purpose, I set out into the wilderness once more, determined to confront the darkness that had consumed so many lives. The air was thick with tension, the silence broken only by the distant cry of the wind. As I ventured deeper into the heart of the wilderness, I could feel the eyes of the spirits upon me, their presence a tangible weight on my soul. But I pressed on, driven by a determination born of desperation. And then, just when I thought I could go no further, I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. A clearing lay before me, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight filtering through the canopy above. In the center of the clearing stood a circle of stones, arranged in a perfect ring, with a single figure standing at its center. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure turned to face me, its features obscured by the darkness. But even in the dim light, I could sense its malevolent intent, a palpable aura of menace that hung in the air like a thick fog. I knew then that I had stumbled upon the source of the haunting, the nexus of darkness that had brought the spirits to life. And as I stood there, bathed in the sickly glow of moonlight, I realized that the battle for the soul of the wilderness was far from over. Chapter 9. Race Against Time. Time seemed to slip through my fingers like grains of sand as I raced against the encroaching darkness, desperate to unravel the mystery of the pipeline's haunting before it was too late. Every moment felt like an eternity, every step a battle against the relentless march of time. The spirits grew more aggressive with each passing moment, their presence looming over me like a shadow that refused to be shaken. I faced increasingly dangerous obstacles as I navigated the treacherous terrain of the wilderness, my every move watched with malevolent intent. But I refused to back down, to surrender to the darkness that threatened to consume me. With Sarah's help, I pressed on, determined to confront the malevolent forces that lurked in the shadows and put an end to the haunting once and for all. Together, we braved the dangers of the wilderness, our footsteps echoing in the silence of the night. The air crackled tension, the darkness pressing in on us from all sides. As we ventured deeper into the heart of the wilderness, the spirits grew more aggressive, their whispers rising to a deafening roar. Shadows danced at the edge of my vision, taunting me with visions of death and despair. But I refused to let fear dictate my actions. With Sarah by my side, I faced the darkness head-on, my every instinct screaming at me to turn back. But I pressed on, driven by a determination born of desperation. And then, just when I thought I could go no further, we stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. A figure stood before us, its form shrouded in darkness. Its eyes gleamed with a fierce intensity, fixed upon us with an unblinking stare. I could feel the weight of its gaze pressing down on me, a palpable force that threatened to crush me beneath its weight. But I stood my ground, my resolve unwavering. With Sarah's help, I confronted the figure, demanding answers to the questions that had plagued me for so long. And as the truth was revealed, I realized that the battle for the soul of the wilderness was far from over. But with Sarah by my side, I knew that together we could overcome any obstacle, no matter how insurmountable it may seem. With renewed determination, we pressed on, our footsteps echoing in the darkness. The spirits may have grown more aggressive, their presence more menacing, but we would not be deterred. For we knew that the fate of the world hung in the balance, and only by facing our fears could we hope to emerge victorious. Chapter 10. The Final Showdown. The air crackled with tension as I stood before the source of the haunting, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the moment I had been preparing for, the final showdown that would test my courage and resolve to their limits. The figure before me loomed tall and imposing, its features obscured by the darkness that surrounded us. I could feel the weight of its gaze upon me, a tangible force that threatened to crush me beneath its intensity. But I refused to back down. With every fiber of my being, I steeled myself for the battle that lay ahead, determined to confront the malevolent forces that had plagued the pipeline for so long. As the spirits closed in around me, their whispers rising to a deafening crescendo, I felt a surge of adrenaline course through my veins. This was what I had trained for, what I had prepared for, the ultimate test of my courage and resolve. With a primal roar, I launched myself at the figure before me, my fists flying in a flurry of blows. The darkness seemed to part around me, enveloping me in its embrace as I fought with a ferocity born of desperation. But the spirits were relentless, their attacks coming fast and furious from all sides. I fought with everything I had, but it was not enough. The darkness threatened to overwhelm me, to swallow me whole and consign me to a fate worse than death. And then, in a moment of clarity, I realized the truth. The only way to break the cycle of violence was to confront the darkness within myself. I had spent so long searching for answers outside of myself, but the truth had been within me all along. With a newfound sense of purpose, I turned inward, facing my deepest fears and darkest secrets head-on. I embraced the darkness, allowing it to wash over me like a wave crashing against the shore. And in that moment, everything became clear. I knew what I had to do, what I had been destined to do since the beginning. With a steely resolve, I made my decision, knowing that it would determine the fate of the haunted pipeline and its restless souls. With one final surge of energy, I launched myself at the figure before me, channeling all of my strength and determination into a single, decisive blow. And as the darkness receded around me, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, knowing that I had finally put an end to the haunting once and for all. The wilderness lay silent around me, the spirits of the past finally at rest. And as I looked out over the snow-covered landscape, I knew that the nightmare was finally over. Chapter 11. Closure and Redemption. The wilderness lay still around me, the echoes of the haunting fading into the distant recesses of memory. With the final battle won and the vengeful spirits laid to rest, I found myself alone with my thoughts, grappling with the aftermath of my harrowing journey. As I sat amidst the snow-covered landscape, I reflected on the toll that the ordeal had taken on my psyche. The nightmares and hallucinations, the constant fear and uncertainty, they had left their mark on me, carving deep scars into the fabric of my soul. But despite the darkness that had threatened to consume me, I found solace in the knowledge that I had emerged from the ordeal stronger and wiser than before. I had confronted my past and overcome my demons, finding redemption in the face of adversity. With a sense of closure settling over me like a comforting blanket, I rose to my feet, ready to leave the wilderness behind and return home. The journey had been long and arduous, filled with dangers and obstacles that I never could have imagined. But through it all, I had persevered, guided by a determination born of desperation and fueled by a desire to set things right. And now, as I prepared to leave the shadows of the Alaskan wilderness behind, I knew that I would carry the lessons I had learned with me always. As I made my way back to civilization, I felt a sense of freedom wash over me, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I was forever changed by my ordeal, but I refused to let it define me. I would live my life free from the shadows that had threatened to consume me, forging a new path forward with courage and determination. And as I stepped onto the familiar streets of home, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The darkness of the wilderness may have tested my resolve, but it had also taught me the true meaning of strength and resilience. With a newfound sense of purpose, I embraced the future, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with courage and determination. For I was no longer the same man who had ventured into the wilderness. So many months ago, I was stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever came my way. Chapter 12. Epilogue: The Lingering Legacy. Despite the passage of time and the vanquishing of the haunting that once plagued the Alaskan wilderness, whispers of the pipeline's dark past continued to echo through the snow-covered landscape. The shadows of history lingered in the air, casting a pall over the remote reaches of the wilderness. Jack's story had become legend among those who dared to venture into the wilderness, a cautionary tale of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. His name was whispered in hushed tones around campfires, his courage and determination immortalized in the annals of history. But despite the passage of time, the spirits of the past remained restless, their presence a chilling reminder of the price of human greed and folly. As the wind howled through the snow-covered landscape, their whispers echoed through the trees, a haunting melody that refused to be silenced. For even though the haunting had been vanquished, the scars it had left behind ran deep. The wilderness bore witness to the sins of the past, its silent sentinels standing as a testament to the horrors that had unfolded within its borders. And as I stood amidst the swirling snow, I knew that the legacy of the pipeline would live on, its dark past a cautionary tale for generations to come. For, in the end, it was not just a story of horror and tragedy. It was a story of redemption and hope, of the indomitable spirit of mankind in the face of adversity. And as I turned my back on the wilderness and made my way back to civilization, I carried with me the lessons I had learned: the importance of courage in the face of fear, the power of redemption in the face of darkness. For even though the spirits of the past may have remained restless, I knew that their legacy would live on in the hearts and minds of those who dared to venture into the remote reaches of the Alaskan wilderness. And as long as their story was remembered, their sacrifice would never be forgotten.